Today we are here at Onondaga State Historic Site, and Onondaga, that you can kind of see behind me, is a New York State park or historic site. It is the only park in New York dedicated to the history and culture of Native peoples. And this site was once an actual Seneca town. There were about 5,000 or more Seneca people that lived here about 350 years ago, and the area that you can see behind me was completely covered with longhouses all the way back to the tree line, and where you can see the longhouse now, which is a reconstruction of an exact size longhouse that was here 350 years ago. Today it has a museum and the reconstructed longhouse, and people can come here and learn about the history and culture of the Seneca people, the people that lived here, and all of the Haudenosaunee in general. There are special events that happen here that include all parts of our culture: music, dance, language, and of course storytelling. Not only am I Onondaga and Turtle Clan, but I am also a traditional and contemporary storyteller. And I say that because the way that I tell my stories is in a very contemporary way. One thing that many people forget when we think about Native Americans is that there are still Native Americans alive today, and we are very much 21st century people. And we will continue on into the future, changing and evolving just like every other person around us. But we are also very traditional people, and there are many things in our communities and within our culture that are very important to us that we hang on to and want to continue to hang on to and share with each other, and sometimes share with the rest of the world around us. Storytelling is one of those things. So when I say I'm a traditional storyteller, I am telling stories that people have told for hundreds and hundreds of years. Some of the earliest writings of European explorers wrote down some of these stories that we still tell today. And these stories teach us about our history. They teach us values that are important within our community. They teach us lessons about the proper way to behave and to interact with each other and with the world around us. And most importantly, stories entertain us. Stories are very fun to listen to. So the way that I tell my stories is very physical, and I run around and I stomp around and I flap my wings and I make animal sounds and I run into the audience and play with the audience, and I make everyone very much a part of the storytelling show. So it is a very contemporary way to tell stories, but I tell in schools and libraries and museums, and it really engages the audience. Hundreds of years ago, when people told stories in longhouses, well, we couldn't do that because it was a smaller space, there were fires inside, people were crowded around you, and that type of storytelling was a little bit different. But the way I tell my stories shows how we continue to evolve. Well, storytelling is very important to the Haudenosaunee in general because historically we had no written language. When we learn about peoples from around the world, even indigenous peoples, they have many different types of written or historical records. But among the Haudenosaunee, we didn't. One of the only ways that we recorded things was using wampum belts. And a wampum is a small bead made out of a clamshell. And we would sew these beads together in a pattern or a picture that helped to remind us of some of our historical stories. But almost everything that we did was oral. And these stories would have to be told over and over and over so that the entire community could remember them and remember the values or the lessons that were contained inside of them. Today, there are not very many storytellers left. Historically, there were probably lots of storytellers because lots of people heard the stories. But today, there are only a few of us that travel around and share stories publicly and even within our own communities. So to me, it's very important to continue this tradition, to perpetuate the oral tradition, and to try to engage young people to become storytellers on into the future. Our stories can be used to educate non-Native people in a very positive way about who we are as Haudenosaunee. Sometimes when we learn about Native Americans, we hear some of the bad things that happened, that people stole land or brought disease or brought alcohol, and those were all horrible things that have plagued us throughout history, and it's important that we learn about them and grow from them. But when I teach about our people, I want to leave people with a very positive image of who we are. I want people to think that they enjoyed learning about who we are and that they want to learn more. And that when they leave my show or my talk or visiting me at a museum or here at Onondaga, that they go away saying, I want to know more about that culture. I want to know more about that group of people because I had such a positive experience. And I think stories are a way to do that. Storytelling continues to be something very important to us. And as Haudenosaunee people, we are still here into the 21st century. Many of us still live on our traditional lands or on our reservations where we have lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And these parts of our culture, from our headdresses and clothing and wampum belts and stories and songs and dances, these things still have a lot of meaning to us right to this day. We may live as 21st century people, but these things continue to be important to us, and they will continue into the future to be important to us. And as a storyteller, keeping the stories alive so that they continue on to the 7th generation into the future is critically important to me. And while we might write them on social media like Facebook or Instagram, or we might make picture books of them, the best part of storytelling is when it's alive and dynamic and living and breathing and a part of each person that is listening to the story. So that's what I try to do with my storytelling and make our culture part of everyone that is listening.